thank you, and welcome to Cinema, Life and Everything. How are you doing today?
Excellent, man. Thank you very much for getting me in the mix. And it'd be awesome to shoot the breeze with you after some long years.
Some long years, yeah. So before we go into how we sort of reconnected and stuff like that, would you just like to tell the viewers and listeners a little bit about yourself, if that's okay?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Leroy Kincade, and I'm a writer, director and producer and founder of a production company called Nocturnal Pictures. The last, 10 years almost, I've been making short films. Segued into making my first feature film in 2019 and currently writing the rest of my slate. So next year, fingers crossed, I'll be moving into production with another one of my feature films. So exciting times, fingers are crossed.
That's amazing. One thing I've got to ask straight away, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but what sort of got you into wanting to be a producer and a director just as opposed to just an actor?
So my biggest thing, if I'm being brutally honest about my reasons into actually starting to make my own material, was when I was focused more so on just working as an actor and becoming somebody who wanted to be sort of seen more of a star player in somebody's project. I just found I just was getting too typecast in a very typical way, because I'm mixed race. I've got, I work out, I look a certain sort of way. So I was getting put in very typical type of roles. And I was like, well, I'm not able to showcase anything by just being like, I don't know, some hoodie on the street or someone who's just the typical like cliche of what you would expect to see. So I started doing my own short films and weirdly fell in love with the craft of making movies. And that was sort of it. I haven't looked back really since. 2017 was when we released a short fan film called Max Payne Retribution. I was acting in that a little bit. But I found that project was the thing that really bit me with the bug of filmmaking. I just, love the whole process from start to finish. And I haven't actually even acted in stuff, I think, since then, weirdly. I've done more just focusing on like making stuff happen. So it's been good.
Do you think it's having, like, in acting, you're just fulfilling a certain part of someone else's vision, whereas with producing and directing, you are controlling more elements, you are really directing the eye, directing the performances as well, so it gives you a bigger chance to explore more of the concept of what you're trying to produce?
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, life's a funny teacher sometimes.
Yes.
You learn different things as you go through different stages of your life, and I'm not a control freak by any stretch of the imagination, but I know what I want from my life. And it's very difficult when you know you can contribute more and people see you as not being able to. So one of the variables that for me, it's not for everybody, and I get that, is that, fortune usually favors only the brave. And for you to stand up and be counted, a lot of the time you've got to take the reins yourself, because nobody's going to give you the opportunity that you need to be giving yourself. So my biggest thing as a filmmaker and overall storyteller now is that, like, I want to be in control of my story in my life and tell it the way I would like to tell it. And I think that, be that as an actor or be that as a filmmaker, I think the projects you say no to are just as important as the ones you say yes to.
100%.
So for me, it's really easy to just try and get caught up in this whirlwind of just working for working's sake. And I find you can burn out much quicker that way in terms of creatively. So for me, it's more about sort of doing the things that feel more fulfilling and satisfying internally first. And that's, I guess, where I'm at now.
That makes a hell of a lot of sense. Really well put together as well. Yeah. And exactly that. Is like, we all have so much creative juice or creative energy in us. So why not spend it in areas that you are fulfilling and being able to show a full range of yourself, as opposed to, like you say, just ticking a box from someone else's vision and just getting stuck in those sort of typecast boxes of just like, oh, you can just be this one thing and that's all anyone sees you marketable as, which is a real shame, because people are capable of so much more. It's like saying that you're going to go into a friendship with somebody and you can only be one emotion in that friendship. Of course you can't. You can experience lots of different emotions, but it's like if you're only allowed to just show that one way of being, then it limits you and sort of restricts you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, you know, one of the tricky things is as well is, like, you know, the important thing is we have to look after ourselves whenever we're doing whatever we're doing. And we can go through the motions of, you know, we would have called it back in the day, just going around in the ring when we was wrestling and stuff. You just go through the motions, you know, you're just going through it. You're not really there, you're there. You're just there, you know, and it's really easy to sort of like switch yourself off, but you're just there. So I always wanted to, one of the lessons I learned from wrestling was, like, I have to listen to my avatar as me when it comes to, I'm not connected to it, so I can't be that invested. So I need to now find that. So all projects that I ever do, be that even as an actor, like, one of the things is what I want to contribute is absolutely solely for the project and the projects for sure. So whatever I've got as an agenda on the side has to fall second to the vision. But I have to make sure that I vet the project before I would get on board with it. And it's so important to, like, you know, we've all had those days where you've worked with people and that, and I get it. Everybody's had a day, but people are having days on people's projects though. So, you know, like, if you're passionate about your short film or a film that you're making, you know, you're so involved with that you want everybody else to share the passion. And I just don't want to become that person ever to be having a day on somebody else's vision. It's like, no, because it's like so important to, like, check your ego at the door, make sure you're in your place doing what it is that you are destined to do. And that's it, all capacities. That's not just as an actor, director, that's like in any job, in anything, you know. I think seldom do we explore ourselves enough to know, you know, am I happy in what I'm doing? You know, like, that's such an important, for me, it's such an important perspective to make sure I maintain at any level of any job or anything I do.
Would you say it's also the idea of feeling necessary as well? Because you liken something to wrestling, and it's sort of, for me, it's sort of like, you don't have to be a major part. You don't have to be the main player. It doesn't even have to be your end goal, but you have to feel necessary. You have to feel like you're confident in this other person and what they're trying to make, because then you can fulfill your part of the bargain in a degree. For me, if you lose someone's I don't know if you feel about it as well, but if you don't feel confident in what the person's doing, or you just feel like a number, you're just a tick box, then that really does reduce your passion and your interest in something quite quickly.
Yeah, well, it also shuts you down a little bit in terms of how you're connected to your work. I mean, you always want to do whatever you do your best on it.
Yeah.
But if somebody sees your potential, but only at a fraction of it, and if you work on enough projects where your potential is only seen at a fraction, there's a problem here, because what'll start happening is you'll start seeing yourself reflectionally as people are viewing you. And the key is like, it's remembering not to view yourself as the world views you, because the world view of you and the view that you've got yourself you've really got to get the internal view more solid than the one that's external. Yeah. So for me, it's like, that's probably the crux of everything that we're saying here, is like, if you work on enough projects where your value is not really being valued, it's only a matter of time before the water comes inside of your boat and starts to sink you with it.
Yeah.
And you're just going to get jaded. And it's so easy to do, because it's like a slow creep. It doesn't just all of a sudden happen. It's like a bit here and a bit here and a bit more there. And before you know it, you've done a number of projects and your self-worth starts to become, well, maybe that's it then. And I think for any of the creatives and people that watch your podcast, you know, maybe there's something they could take from it. But it's like, it's so important to make sure that your perspective on your view of yourself is the view you have to have in check every time you're doing something. Because even if you're not being valued on a project, as long as you've got your self-worth and your value in what you're doing, it doesn't matter. Like, you know, sometimes like I've been on projects, we talk about from let's say SPAC work type
Yeah.
of acting, that type of stuff. Like I've gone down to like far out places like down in Cornwall just to lay on a beach and do nothing else but lay on a beach. Just, it's great getting paid, but it was ice cold. It was for pretty big production. But overall, it's not bad to do that. But it's also like, well, you're capable of much more than that.
Yeah. I like that as going down the gym and doing reps. It's like not every rep's going to be a personal best, but you're doing the reps and it gives you experience. And as long as, like you say, as long as that isn't your end goal and you're just seeing it as a progression towards something else, and it's fine.
Yeah. And also, like, I think, contradicting some of what I've just said as well, I think it is also nice to be around other like-minded people at times that share a similar vision to, everybody's got plans or goals or ambitions to want to do more. So I think it's nice also when you're on those sets and you're working with people and you can connect with other like-minded people like that, because I think there's like a synergy there, because not everybody, wants to be, I don't know, a leading role, or not everybody wants to be a director, or not everyone wants to. And I think like that's part of the beauty of the eclectic life that we live, is you get now a different experience. So the key is just not to become bitter on the journey of progress, to where you're going, wherever that may be, as a creative.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I really like that, what you said about connecting to other people and stuff as well. It's pretty much why I do this podcast. But I guess as we are talking about this podcast, we should mention the fact you have picked 3 films today, the impossible choice, your 3 favourite films, which I know for most people changes on a daily basis anyway. But would you like to mention the 3 you picked, if that's okay?
Yeah, so the 3 movies I picked is a film with Nicolas Cage. 2 films. The Family Man. That's a lovely classic. I watched that recently. It's quite surprising actually how much. Well, I'll get into detail on that, but it has even a deeper meaning to me now. That film. Another film, City of Angels.
Yeah.
With Nicolas Cage in it again, and I'm sure everybody's favourite, this one, Aliens.
Is it? It was 2 things here. First of all, picking 2 Nicolas Cage films where he's sort of back in the mainstream again now, but he's much more. He's done these a lot more quirky parts now, where he's like playing Dracula or Back from the Dead in Mandy or something like that. But these are 2 films that I sort of saw him in where he's sort of pretty much playing it straight. There's little bits of quirkiness in it, but not too much. And I'm expecting him, especially in The Family Man, to become this big sort of horror film or nightmare film. But it doesn't. It's Nicolas Cage in a sort of romantic comedy, and it was weird to get used to for a little while, but an incredible film. And I was going to say about Aliens, is this the special edition with the sentry guns and the fact she sees her daughter, or is it just the straight original version?
Yeah. It's got to be the special edition one, because that's where they got the extra scene at the beginning on LV-42, where little Newt, it goes with her family down into the ship, because you don't get that in the other one, and you don't get to see inside of it before it's all gone haywire. Yeah. Whereas in the special edition, you got those extra bits. So.
Yeah, it's a lot more effective. I mean, both versions are good, but I love the special edition. So no, brilliant. So go on. Where would you like to start? Which one would you like to start off with then?
We could start with City of Angels.
Brilliant.
Yeah, start with City of Angels. Yeah. So what do you want to know? What's the question you want to know about that one?
So for me, it's why this film? Why did this one stand out to you? What's its message? What leapt out at you? Thought, right, this is one of the films I have to pick.
So that film particularly, I would say, has a different resonance for why I look at it. It's almost dark in a way, but it's also partly beautiful as well. Obviously, for anybody that's not seen the film, it's basically Nicolas Cage starts off as an angel, falls in love with a woman on Earth as an angel. He's by her side protecting her, type of thing, and then he decides to take the leap of faith and become human. And I think, in life, we all have different variations of leaps of faith. I think that's quite an important lesson in that film. Sometimes you've got to risk it all to have a moment, and in that moment, is the moment just a moment, or is it more than that? But within the story as well. So he takes the leap of faith, and then he finds the love, he connects with the love, which is really, really cool. But then, unfortunately, throughout the duration of that time, he ends up losing her, and in a very poetically beautiful way, where you don't need to see any more than a candle being extinguished. And I think for me that represents life cycle, because I think we have to remember that we're not here forever, and tomorrow's never promised for everybody. So we're in these moments when we get to share them. For me, that movie was more about, like, he took the leap of faith. He got to share a moment and experience what it's like to have loved and lost, because there's that saying, and it's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all. And by him having that experience in this story, the long and short of it, I mean, people are going to take different things from the movie. But for me, that was the biggest thing, was like, we can think we have it all figured out, and in the end, something radically can change everything. And then we're now left with a new beginning to something else. And this is what he has. He has basically a complete rebirth. He has an experience of the love, and then is reborn again after she goes.
Yes.
But he got to share that moment with the food, and that moment with them being intimate, and those moments. And I think if we look at life as a from beginning to end cycle, life ultimately is not an age, it's moments. And those moments that we connect with people in, and those moments that we build something in, and those moments that transcend life almost beyond, like we can all, for example, we meet many people in our life, but very few leave footprints in your heart. And the ones that leave footprints in your heart have a life journey with you, even if it's short, because they will go everywhere you go, because it's part of them that made your day or changed the trajectory of how you see things or the world.
Yeah.
And I think this film really represents somebody coming into your life, leaving a footprint, and then tomorrow's not promised for everybody, and then they go. And now you're left carrying that. I mean, obviously it's quite a deep lesson that I've taken from it. But for me, I love films that help remind me to remember, stay grounded.
Yeah. I think that is the beauty of all art as well. I always love it when you see a film or look at a painting or listen to some music and someone gets a completely different interpretation from it. I think it should always enable you to ask questions. And it's like you could go back and watch a film 5-10 years after you've seen it the first time, and it feels like a completely different film to you, because like your experience has changed. But it was, watching that one again, it's a beautiful film, a remake, and it's just like the way the angels are set up in this version with the suits, and they've obviously got emotion, but they're very reserved, they're very refined, they can be chosen, or the way they stand and look at sunrise and stuff, and it's like they're feeling it, but they can't actually feel. So when Nicolas Cage's character becomes human and suddenly he has access to all these emotions, the good and the bad, the pain, the suffering, but the joy and the love, it's, even though for him the love is a very short part, he has become complete, he has become whole. And it's a wonderful film, really well judged as well, and just beautifully shot.
Yeah. The madness is well, I feel like films like that just don't have the emotional tonality like they used to. Like that sort of just doesn't seem like it would be made into today's fast-paced, swipe left or right, crazy world. And I think, it's always nice to look back at these movies and be like, wow, man, like it was a really good time in cinema, where stories had a heart, there was a pulse, far beyond just having a love scene for the sake of a love scene. It's like the whole the whole process of life, love and loss. Sometimes it's really nice to see it manifest in a story like that, because it has a perforation much longer than just the movie's normal natural life cycle. You know, we're talking about it. What it was in 1999 it come out, 2000.
But 1999. Yeah.
So I mean, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say it's for me, because I had a similar feeling to you very recently about what has happened to these films, these ones that aren't the big budget superhero films. Not that there's anything wrong with that if you want to watch that, but why are these sort of films not getting seen or made anymore? And the fact is that they are getting made. I got the BFI Film Festival booklet through the other day, and there are plenty of films on there that are fulfilling these sort of roles, that are dealing with bigger complex issues and very mid-budget, low budget, very pertinent and very sort of emotional films. But it's more the way films are being viewed now. They sort of get chewed up in this grinder of, like, if it's streaming or it gets bought out by a bigger production house, and it just doesn't get released. The problem is, at the moment, we're sort of like absolutely just inundated with new things coming out on streaming, whereas if you go to a video shop or get something on DVD, you had a bit more time to look and access, and maybe so much wasn't feel like it was rushing out all the time. But stuff just gets lost now. It's scary how quickly things are just getting shown and onto the next thing, or how things get marketed even.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it's just content, isn't it? And what I mean, with love and respect to everybody that puts the hustle in and makes a project, it's like, you know, as a passionate filmmaker, you know your film becomes content on a smorgasbord of hundreds and thousands of other films, and there's nothing unique about the release strategy anymore. It's just get it out. You know, like we're at an age where obviously we're not super young, but we're old enough to not be too old, but we're in this between age where we know what it was like to see a film come out at the cinema, take 6 months before it came out anywhere else.
Yes.
And it was a big deal, and you might have had a computer game to boot with the film. Whereas now it's just a film that comes out. And I think, you know, filmmakers for sure, you know, we have to like hold on to like that magic and that ethos that got us involved with wanting to tell stories, because I very much want to pioneer that, because I think that if somebody doesn't do it, if people don't do it, it's just very easy to just get caught up in just producing to produce, just to make a film, just a film. And I get it, we got to pay bills, but the thing is that the reality is when we're telling these stories and we're just putting them out and they're just out, like, what becomes lost in translation for me a lot of the time is that heart story of what was the perspective of that individual that wrote that, told that story, or did this or did that. I love sitting down, like, you know, we're using films obviously from back in the days. Like, obviously in my list of films, there's no films that are current. I mean, there are very good films that are out currently, but for me, I don't want to say I'm caught in nostalgia, but there's things that get me from before that I struggle to connect with stuff now, you know, and it's more to do with the fact that, like, I think when you build a level of intellect and you start asking more from what you digest, you start to realize that sometimes on the surface of things, there's not as much as you thought there would be under the hood, you know. And for me, I'm not someone easily stimulated by the swipe left or right attitude, or the be hit with you know, have our like dopamine hit with 1,000,001 things in one moment. I like to digest, you know, like to sit with a character a little bit, have it percolate, not have, you know, by page 10 we have to have hit this and that, and it, you know, because what happens is you start ticking too many boxes rather than living with the character and finding where a character's going to go. You know, what is there, like little quirks and stuff. Sometimes we're not sat in that bubble long enough with them, because we're producing content and content's just getting put on a platform just to do what it needs to do. and I get it, like, you know, anybody that makes a movie is part of content creation in the end. It's just a shame that we are viewing it as content rather than we're making a film. Do you know what I mean?
Very much. And it seems, unfortunately, that someone will hit a winning formula, and rather than someone else going, oh, that was unique, good luck to them, I need to find something unique now, everyone just jumps on that particular formula, and suddenly you get like 20 films that all look, sound, and are exactly the same. And I just think it doesn't credit the audience with enough intelligence a lot of the time. Like you're saying, okay, we've got to have done this by this page. We've got to have done this by this page. There's got to be an explosion. There's got to be a joke. There's got to be there. And you see it in trailers now as well. They're showing you everything. And it's like, like you said, give something a chance to breathe, because if you credit the audience with intelligence, if you give something that's been worked upon and produces true emotion, it will stand the test of time and sticks with you a lot longer.
Yeah. I mean, you know, like, we're just so conditioned to just be reactional now. Oh, flashing lights. Oh, like, you know, another post. Oh, let me like that. Oh, you know, we're so busy doing this that we're actually, like, if you look at it, go to Netflix, you struggle to pick something.
Yeah.
So much. There's so much there. What are you going to watch? You're going to watch a long format film, which would be like an episodic massive thing, which is really great. But, you know, you might not be in the mood for murders today, so maybe you want to watch love. If not love, then you might watch, you know, it's so much. And I think, not that it's a bad thing, but it's almost like with an audience in mind. You know, the filmmaker in me, the storyteller in me, I have to respect the audience. You know, I'm like, does this person who's going to, you know, said individual that watches a film, is their goal to just watch a film, get absorbed into the film, and sort of feel like part of that film's in them and they can take part in that movie if they wanted to? Or is my goal just to keep them loosely entertained, just for an hour, so they can go? Because I don't know about yourself, Phil, but for me, what I remember about movies is I remember stuff about films that left me feeling like I was He-Man. Do you know what I mean? Or left feeling like, oh my God, the Battlestar Galactica, those guys on the plane, now let me get in there. You know, I remember being involved mentally in some way. Obviously, I was a young kid back then, but it's like, that's the magic that I believe, I don't want to say is missing. I just think it gets lost in translation a lot with content.
I almost feel, to your point, I almost feel that that films and entertainment is being produced now to be watched on a small screen, or it's almost like McDonald's stimulation, that you're sort of every now and again you'll look at it, but you're on your phone or you're on your tablet and you're doing something else as well, or you're making dinner, and every now and again you'll hear a funny line and you'll look at it and go, and then go back to whatever you're doing. I agree in completely what you said. All my favorite films, they left me feeling concussed. They left me feeling that I could barely breathe, that I was completely shaken in what I'd just seen. And I'd be thinking about it for days afterwards. Those were important moments to me. And I saw it in a film called After Sun the other week that was, again, just completely like, I was like, this was incredible. But I think that's one beauty of the cinema, that you are put in a situation, in an environment where you can't do anything else. You're in a dark room, look at the screen, and for the whole of that film, just look at that screen. And I think that's so important. I think so many people these days, it's just become, like you said, another dopamine hit, another bit of stimulation that you look and you're 10% engaged in, but then you're doing everything else at the same time.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, for me, I love watching a film that moves me a bit as well, that makes me like feel something, you know, be it emotional sadness, happiness, whatever it is, or make me feel like, yeah, come on, you can go for it. You know, I think the industries that's doing this pretty well, and it's different, is the gaming industry.
Yes.
I think the gaming industry, I mean, I'm not a big avid gamer. I've got into a few games in the last year, 2 years, but one of the things that I wanted to digest was like, what does it feel like having this narrative told over, obviously, a gameplay? So I played a computer game called Days Gone, and it's a bit like a zombie survivor horror type of thing. But the storytelling in it, when you go through it long enough, the storytelling that's in it is absolutely amazing. And I mean, like, you know, I would quite comfortably say that, like, there was parts of this story that actually really moved me, and it took me back to like times where I'd watched other films and I'd remember that feeling, and I was like, that's what's missed. That was what I had felt was missing in some stories that I've watched recently. That I just felt like I just wasn't moved. I don't know. I think again the lost in translation thing is important, because I think you've got the film that you write, you've got the film that you make, and the film that you edit overall. Yeah. So, you know, there's 3 types of films that you're going through, and the film that you end up editing to get out is the final product. But to get to that, there's 2 other stages. You're shooting it and all of that. But you have an idea, but in the end, you know, you've got so many chains of command potentially on some projects, so many other perspectives, that some of the real intent just doesn't make it to the screen. And those might be the bits where, you know, we've all seen the director's cut of certain movies and you're like, why was that not even in there?
Yeah.
Like that should have been well and truly in there. And I think that's what is unfortunate now, is that sort of that groundwork isn't always getting its way to the screen, and it's a bit of a shame.
It does make a shame. Well, before we talk about a director's cut, I was going to say, I always like to ask as well, is there a scene in City of Angels, but it's hard to ask, I know, but is there one particular scene in City of Angels that sticks with you at all?
Yeah, it's the moment when Meg Ryan's going down on the bike.
Spoilers there, go on.
Spoilers. Yeah, she makes it and she lives happily ever after. It's that moment, you know, because, you know, when you look at like a spiritual connection in our life, right? We're all connected in some way, be that physically, mentally, spiritually, or the whole gamut of them all. Yeah. And to me, it represented a moment where, if anybody that's in the film, you'll see that Nicolas Cage is not currently at the point in time with Meg Ryan when she's going down on the bike. But there's like the moment where the candle blows out, which is basically a vibe of the extinguishing of the crossing of time has now happened. He felt like something was odd. There's something had been moved in his spirit. Yeah. For me, that moment there is really important, because I think we have a lot of moments in our life where we feel spiritually moved and we ignore our intuition in moments when we need to be trusting our intuition. Be that on creative projects, be that in just general life, be that in partners, friends. You know, there's that moment there for me, because I think when I really look at it, because I love to break stuff down in a very different way, and I look at things from like a spiritual and religious standpoint, it's like that for me is really important, because it's like it shows, even in this heart of this story, this pulse, he's left a life behind where he was a fallen angel. Now he's a fallen angel living physically on this earth, but he's still got the connection to something, and he still feels. You know what I mean? Like there's that bond between them. That moment there, if you really look at it, is like, for me, I find that just so powerful, because we have moments like that ourselves. We just got to not ignore it.
It's wonderfully put. And yeah, like you say, how a Hollywood blockbuster of the time can still convey a message that can be so beautiful and fragile and just perfect and intimate, you know? And it's still... It's a way of storytelling that I really would love to see up on the big screen again and pushed harder as well. But would you like to go into Aliens next, the director's cut?
Hello,
can you hear me okay?
Oh, you broke up a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
You broke up. You froze on me then.
Oh, sorry about that. I'll remember to cut that bit out. But I was going to say, would you like to go on to Aliens next?
Aliens, yes. Well, it's aliens. That's it.
Right. That's
The next one. Well, aliens. Oh dear, where do I start with that? Oof. Right. Obviously, you've got your kick-ass action from the jump. Like, you know, I love the way that you've got these professionals that are going into an environment that's very hostile, but at first doesn't seem it. You know, and then as they start to go through, you know, these guys can really let rip, but it's almost like they've got all this power, but yet they're almost powerless to this entity that's unseen to them. Do you know what I mean? They have no idea what they're walking into, and they literally go from the frying pan into the fire. And I think, like, watching them all be challenged in a way where it's like, you know, a fight for survival. You know, it just always stuck with me, that movie. From the action, the horror was probably the biggest thing for me in that. I don't want to say affected me as a child, but I remember having the odd nightmare or two, being chased around by xenomorph, and it wasn't funny. It wasn't funny at all. So yeah, man, no, but I think overall as well, like, what I love about Aliens is it was one of the first types of film that really put, I think, the female action hero, in a sense, on the map. I mean, you had like Wonder Woman and stuff from like 70s or mid 80s or whatever it was when they did that. But if you look at it, you know, Sigourney Weaver in that role was, I believe that role was one of the first, I think, from the West films where you know, there's a woman running around with a gun, kicking butt. Right. You know, it's the one that sticks out to me mostly, and for me, I really like that. I really like, you know, like the character Vasquez.
Yeah.
You know that, like her badass attitude. Just, you know, she seemed a bit more tougher than Sigourney in that story, but you know, it's nice having like a eclectic mix of characters in like a boiling pot, ready to sort of like figure something out at any moment or implode at any moment. Yeah. You know, I find that storytelling just like fascinating. I love seeing that.
I think the simple fact as well, both in Alien and in Aliens, it felt like, even though Ripley was the main character, all the other characters, all the secondary characters, all felt human. They all felt they had stories what led them there, like Hicks or Hudson, or even the android, spoilers, Bishop, you know, or Ash in the first one. These felt like fully fleshed out, rounded characters, and you could do a side film about one of these and it would be perfectly interesting as well. That depth of care and precision that both Cameron and Ridley Scott is known for, to make a complete world. It's not just settling for that'll do. Everything has a reason and a point and a purpose.
Yeah. And I think that's the magic of those movies from that time. You know, like, characters really were characters. Like, they were real fleshed out people that you could almost, as you say, you could almost segue with one of them and you would feel in safe hands with them. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, I think if you look at it, every one of them has their own little moment in their own way at a certain point. Some are bigger, some are smaller than others. You know, Vasquez, she has her one. Weirdly, when just before she ends up, you know, committing Harry Carey down the little tunnel before she gets caught. But ultimately, like, there was like part of that nature, you know, like her attitude in that, you know, just like, I'm not giving up until the very, you know, like, just simply iconic. I don't know if I'd seen that in a female character before that particular moment. I can't recall any earlier signs of that. And I think, you know, obviously it's not just about like the female characters, but it's one of the things that sticks out mostly to me as, you know, like, it just shows you that, like, in the right playing field, everybody can be a player. You know, it's not, there's not the cliche you would get there. Oh, you know, vulnerable person or vulnerable this, or, you know, damsel in distress. It's like, actually, women were the ones saving the day on that. Do you know what I mean? I find that narrative of storytelling, that ability to convey a space where everybody feels equal, like, because it's so easy to forget that, like, there's some tropes and cliches that just generally don't make it that far just because of that. Like, you just think of it, like, everybody's equal in that movie ultimately.
Well, and one of the big things, sorry, go on.
No.
Okay, no, I was going to say, one of the big things with the special edition this is why I had to ask at the beginning or not, because there is a scene deleted, like, once they find Ripley at the beginning, that it comes out that she had a daughter, but she's been in hypersleep for so long, her daughter's actually died. She outlived her daughter's, like, life. And so for all intents and purposes, Newt becomes Ripley's surrogate daughter. And at the same time, you see the shadow version of herself, the alien queen, making eggs. So it really is this dual side of mothership and survival, or motherhood and survival, and at the same time just the good and the perverted, Ripley just wanting to find herself again, dealing with her darkest fears, going back to her biggest nightmares, but finding redemption at the end of it, a perfect hero's journey, and getting Newt at the end of it. And then at the same time looking at this mechanism that's just job is to produce eggs and make more of itself but the alien isn't being evil, the alien's just trying to survive. And then Alien 3 come along and ruined it all.
That movie, man. Oh dear.
Oh,
Alien 3 wasn't so bad. It just took a different approach. I don't think it was bad. I liked Alien 3 for what it tried to do. It tried to evolve the xenomorph a little bit. Resurrection for me, I don't know what happened there. Yeah. I was going to say, like, one of the interesting things with what I like with Aliens as well, though, is I forgot the character's name. What's the one on the ship that gets her to go on the mission to start? Bert? Is it Bert?
Incredible.
So, like, I think his story is really interesting when you watch it, because obviously from afar, he's like the red herring, but just in a very different way. He's got some complete agenda of his own, but he's a player with everyone. He's playing the games, like, he's there, and then he's willing to sacrifice everybody to get one of these things back.
Yeah.
And I think like, if you watched it just as a casual view and didn't really pay an awful lot of attention, it'd be quite easy to miss the moment where they're having the conversation around how he could have got one of these eggs back in either Newt or Ripley. I think like, when she goes to sleep under the bed, Newt, and then the gun's gone, and that moment's quite an iconic moment within the movie. But the subtext of that moment is also quite dark. The fact that, no life is expendable, especially, the child. Do you know what I mean? It's just really, really interesting, those little dark twists that they've got in there. And I love those little moments.
We're just making a point as well that ultimately, even though it's this evil thing that can wipe out humanity, there's money to be made from it. And it's more important for Weyland-Yutani to get one back, even though you get this idea that if they did, they wouldn't really be able to control it, because that was one thing I loved about Aliens as well. In Alien, it's a bunch of astronauts or space jockeys with very little technology, so it's very hard for them to have to deal with just one. But when you see the beginning of Aliens, they're all these tooled up space marines. So you're like, they're just going to be able to smash these things to smithereens, but they can't. Aliens adapt as well, especially when you see a lot of them and the way they attack like insects. Like, the thing that haunts me is when he pushes open the ceiling and they're crawling along the ceiling towards him like spiders. It's like, but of course they would act like that. And there's a wonderful scene in Alien Resurrection where one of the aliens dives into the water and is a perfect swimmer. And it's like, of course it would be a perfect swimmer, because they're the perfect, like, hunting organism. They're bloody scary.
Yeah. I think that's like, one of Hollywood's, I think, greatest would you call them monsters?
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
they
Like
probably would be, but
creations.
yeah, like it's one of Hollywood's like greatest. I think enemies. When you think like you can even kill it, and it can still kill you because of the acid, and
Yeah.
you know, like, I think that was I found that actually because I saw this film was 86 when it came out. I think I watched it probably 89. I was very young when I watched it. You know, I must have been about 4, maybe 5. But like, that was one of the scariest things I remember of it. It was actually the acid blood. I found that quite creepy. The fact that the blood could go on the floor and see it all melting. I don't know. It was really weird. That really stuck with me, like for some reason. You know, I think the fact is that, you know, that, as you say, they're so adaptable. These creatures, these animals, or whatever you would call them. You know, that there's sort of almost, as he says, the perfect organism. Do you know what I mean? Like they reference this a few times within different variations of the movie. I think they say it in Aliens Resurrection.
Yeah.
There's a guy in there. I can't remember the names of all the characters in that. I've not really watched that one too much, but there's one of them in there where they're idolizing these aliens.
Yeah.
They're just idolizing them, and they reference it quite a bit, saying it's like the perfect organism. I think could almost be, I suppose, in most adaptable. So Darwinism, innit? You know, not strongest of the species. So one most
adaptable. Yeah. Do you have a favourite scene? Do you have a favourite scene? And it's a tricky one because Jim Cameron is very good at making a film just a collection of amazing scenes. So, do you have a favourite one in Aliens?
Scene.
It's all one big favourite scene. It's so obvious.
Yeah, that's actually a really tricky question. Favourite scene. Let me dig. It was a favourite. It's not a favourite scene as such, but it's one that really just stuck out for just a really random reason. It's not anything super great. I just remember the first time I watched the special edition version of it, and you see the sentry guns.
Yeah.
It's not anything spectacular, but if we think about the period of time that we're in, 1986. So we'd had like a couple of fancy TV shows. Mate, I think V might have been out, Battlestar Galactica might have been out. Could have been a Star Wars, maybe in and around that. But I don't remember seeing autonomous guns.
Yeah.
I don't recall ever seeing that in anything. And I really remember like, what are these guns? Like, wow. Like, it seems really silly, but to me, it's not a favourite scene as such. It's just a moment that sticks out. Because I would almost say the film is almost like it is one scene. Like I just can't separate it.
I just think that rewatching it back, it was thank you for selecting it because it was a pleasure to rewatch again. But one of the big things that leapt out on me, like, the second half of the film is about nuclear bombs going off and time constraints and Ripley fighting the mother alien in a power loader, and it's like a Godzilla battle. It's incredible, like the scale of it. But the first, especially in the special edition, James Cameron does such a good job of building up the suspense. Like you say, you see the original Hadley's Hope where it's full of people and going about their day. And then when the Marines turn up, empty, silent, haunted house, absolutely terrifying. And he really does make you wait for the things to kick off. And when they do, Jesus, do they? But he really did get the mood of the first one and bring in this action film in the second half, which was incredibly well done.
Yeah, it's a very visceral movie when you watch and see how it starts. You know, because it's really important. I think, you know, for any of the audience that hasn't seen the special edition, it's really important to get a context of how the vibe of the normality is before the aliens wreak havoc in there, because I think like the atmosphere is so much different when it's like normal. It's like, oh, okay, it's quite, I suppose, relatively peaceful, even though we'd probably watched Aliens once before we'd seen the special edition. So you knew it's coming. So you almost, it still felt quite scary because the atmosphere felt the same. There was like this uncanny valley feeling. Like, that doesn't feel normal. It feels even more creepy now. It's normal. But no, I think what James Cameron done with that, absolutely fascinating. I love the world that is really built into Aliens, the different depths that it goes, you know, because I guess you start with curiosity, then you end up in fight or flight, you know, when they're trying to escape, and then you get desperation, you know, because when everything, you know, the ship that they try calling down from the Sulaco just goes into the ground and gets trashed, like all of this stuff. It's like, wow, you know, what hope do they have? And then little to no hope when they get told, oh, they've got like 7 hours or whatever it is.
Yeah, where it blows out.
It's like, oh, great. You know, so, I think, sorry, go on.
No, go, please.
I was just going to say, like, I do see, you know, it's definitely hard to isolate that movie into one particular scene for sure, because there's just so many cool moments in it that really just, I don't want to say resonate into my filmmaking career, but like, I definitely would say even to this day, I'm very influenced by Aliens for sure, you know, from a storytelling perspective and an atmosphere.
Jim Cameron has just made some absolute classics that have stood the test of time, and the technology used does not look dated. Like Aliens would still hold up today. It's an incredible, amazing film. So I was going to say, while we've got a bit of time, should we get on to the one film that you suggested that I hadn't seen before and I had an absolute pleasure in watching it, Family Man with Nicolas Cage?
Yeah. So this one, you know, on a deeper, definite note on this one, like, for me, life is very much of a time frame, right? We get, you know, relatively 80, 85 summers, 85 winters, springs, and all of that. So we have a duration of time that we're born into existence, and the clock is ticking. Within that duration of time, we are sometimes given glimpses at our potential, right? So be that as a career, be that in a relationship, be that in any manner of different things. And sometimes it's our job, once we get the glimpse, to then decipher our way to get that as a normal, right? Yeah. So for me, years ago, it was like, okay, cool. I was fortunate enough to have a match on WWE SmackDown, right? Yeah. Years ago. So I'm very thankful for that opportunity that I got at that point in time. But for me, what I took from that is that's a glimpse of the potential of whatever I could do in terms of how I saw myself and what I want to do. We're ultimately limitless. The only limits that we put on ourselves are in here. Yeah. This movie, for me, really resonates because what it does is it gives an insight into a man's life of what he chose versus what would have made him happy. So he chose the job, he got the job, he done the career, he done all of that, got this lifestyle, and then he's offered almost like a genie in a bottle sort of wish. He's granted an opportunity to have a glimpse, but he doesn't know it. So once he wakes up and he's in this new life and he finds this new normal that he grows into, that he loves, in the end, when he loses it, it left a bigger hole than had he not even had it at all. Like the fact that he knew, wow, like this is life and how it could have been. I've got all of this money and now I don't have it. Like now I don't have the simple things, the noise in the morning, the person next to me in bed, like that sort of stuff. Obviously, you know, we're looking at it in a very deep way rather than the story. But for me, that like this is the message that I took from the film, you know, because there's one moment in that entire movie that is just so pertinently powerful that unless you've probably suffered severe loss, you won't maybe resonate with it. And it's a moment where he wakes up on the bed after he tries to not fall asleep.
Oh, that'd be mad. Yeah.
When he's watching her and he's like, you know, he knows it's coming, but he's just trying to hold on. And then basically he holds on, and then he falls asleep, and then he wakes up in his bed. And he's waking up in the comfort of his normal bed.
Mm.
And he sits up and he looks back at the empty space. Now, you could miss the power of that empty space if you're not aware of it, right? So I recently went for a bereavement. I lost my nan. She was like the closest person to me in probably my life, I would say.
Sorry, mate.
This was about 8 weeks ago. Now, obviously, I went through a very traumatizing experience for going through that, losing somebody so close. But the glimpse of what I got there was like, I know what it's like to feel that sort of unconditional love.
Mm.
On the bed, when he wakes up and he turns back and he looks, it's not the absence of, no one there. It's now how incomplete his life is. Now he looks there and it's all of the small things that get left by those people that come and go. Right?
Yeah.
And you get those glimpses of life. And it's not just about making it about people, like, in terms of losing a loved one. You could adapt this to anything, like, if it's about a career, you could have something so good and almost feel like, wow, this is me. And then obviously it gets taken away for whatever reason, be that it was just a short job that we do, like if you were doing acting or something. You can work on a project and you're like, man, amazing. And then afterwards, it's gone. Now what? Now we've got to find a new normal again. So the key is when we get these glimpses in our life, just like in the film, it's about holding on to those moments and making sure that we make new moments that are like that. For me, the film, is very deep, actually. Like if you look at it on the surface again, no, it's just a cool little movie. If you really look at the meaning behind some of it, it shows you a lot of the time what we do is we deny ourselves by trying to fit this mold of, what we believe we want, when in fact our heart and our essence is telling us something else. And it's like, we've really got to, like, I'm somebody who very much believes in, like, it's not listening to about what you feel, but your intuition sometimes knows stuff that your head will never be able to tell you. And we have to trust that when it comes to whatever we're doing in our life. And when we get these glimpses and these moments, because if you look at that story in Family Man, the Family Man, he has moments where he leaves her at the airport. It's just a feeling that she had, and she shares it with him, and he's like, it's just going to be a couple of weeks. It'll be fine. And it's like, but you don't realize that door that you just shut, and then at the end, when it's juxtaposed and flipped, and then he's the one in the airport saying to her, we've got kids, we've got a child, mate. It's like, it's so fucking powerful. Sorry, I'm swearing.
No, you're a loud one.
It's so powerful. Oh, mate, sorry, make a little note there. I think we'll drop to there. Yeah, like, it's so powerful that, like, and it's not about being soppy, man. It's just like that sort of stuff. I don't. If I look at my type of movies I make, right, the type of films I make aren't these types of films. No. Eventually, maybe, like, when I'm like 60s or something like that, I might make one of these as my final tilt of the hat. But these are the types of movies, like The Family Man. I watched it about 2-3 weeks ago. Again, just like I hadn't seen it for like nearly 15 years or so. And I watched it, I was like, man, I have a different, even deeper understanding of this film now, that had I not gone through a massive bereavement myself, I couldn't appreciate it as much as I can now. So, yeah, I think if there was a lesson I would nudge on that as well. It'd be like, to anybody, I'd be like, just trust your intuition. Like, if you look at between The Family Man and City of Angels, there's a lot of intuition nudges that are in the characters in those stories. And I think we should lead a lot of the time from the heart, the inner part of oneself, rather than the head. For sure.
The Alchemist, by the way.
No, I haven't.
You need to read the book called The Alchemist. It's only like, it's not a very long book, but the way you keep saying listen to your heart and stuff, I think you'll read this book and it'll absolutely blow your mind. I'll send you a message about this after it, but it's just you're saying so much stuff. You'd be like, Leroy, you'd read it and you think, I've written this book. It's really close to what you're saying. I love The Family Man. The only thing that I would say back at it was, at the beginning, like you say, she begs him not to go, and he goes, it'll only be a couple of weeks, and he goes and has an amazing life. And it doesn't, at the end, fair enough, it makes the point that he misses being a family man more than he did being the bachelor. But then, of course, at the end, he runs to the airport and he exactly the same, begs her not to go, and she says, all right, I won't go. So I'm thinking, right, Nicholas, you're 2 for 2 there, mate. You turned your back on her, and then she's actually turned her back on her job for you. So I was like, no, you know, at the end when they're having a cup of coffee and stuff, I'm a bit like, you better understand that she's given up her life twice for you now.
Yeah. There definitely is that. There definitely is that in the message of it. Yeah, it's a funny one though, because I get, you know, there's probably like little holes probably within the structure of it, if you want to look at it like that, maybe. But I think the thing that I love ultimately about it is it's just that, like, if we really look at like what we do in terms of just life and shit like that, is that we end up just like living so much from an ego place. Yeah. Like, it's gonna be fine, we're gonna do it, it's cool. Sometimes you need that, but then sometimes the people that wish us the best, love us the most, are the ones that are left behind and suffer the most as a result of what we end up head willing ourselves to do.
Yes.
And I think it's really important, like, that there's messages that are in these films, and obviously we're, you know, you could look at films and talk about life lessons in the movie. But I think, like, for me, what I love to share when it comes to sort of film and stuff, like when it comes to me talking and working on things, is very much like, you know, I don't want to say everything that I do or everything I watch is a lesson, but I use it always as a lesson. I love to learn new things in ways that I couldn't have seen them before. And some of these movies have some real deep meaning, you know, from back in the days. You know, so I love those.
And I was going to say as well, it's sort of like you don't always have to suffer to learn some of these lessons. And I think that's the beauty of art and the stories it sounds like you're telling as well. That for me, the worst thing that art can ever will be, oh, that's nice. Oh, that was good. Oh, yeah, and then you forget about it 2 seconds later, or you're barely engaged with it. I think if you hate something or you love something, but if something really resonates with you, you can use those lessons. Ultimately, we're all creating art from human experience, from things we've found so valuable we want to share with a greater audience. So it's nice that if you can take some of these lessons on board and not have to sort of ride into a tree on a bike yourself, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, you know, when you look at it, like, you know, ultimately, in the end, like, you know, whoever writes these stories, you know, they're coming from a place of some experience with something for them to be able to write an aspect of the story, for it to make its way into it. Now, I'm not saying people have lived this type of, you know, like a guy jumped off a bridge to be able to fall to earth in grace and find his love alive, but the metaphor beyond it. Like, so as a writer, like, I love to see maybe where was that writer at when he wrote that? You know, this is why I said that moment in The Family Man, when he sits on the bed and looks back to the bed and sees the empty bed. For me, like, going through what I experienced with losing my nan, thinking of that moment, the small moments after she was gone in the house, like honestly, it was almost like unbearably torturous. However, you have to find the beauty now in the loss of somebody, right? So I was like, where was the writer when he wrote that? Where was the headspace? Because these are ultimately maybe lessons waiting within the story, buried in narrative.
Yes.
You know, so like when I write my material, I use a lot of metaphors and a lot of things within the subtext of it. So much so that it's almost like you might not necessarily notice that there's a story underneath there with the life lesson in it. But I like to construct things in a way that make you go, actually, that's a lot deeper than I thought. And I think it's things that make you go, a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Make you think about it beyond the moment.
That is an incredible way of putting it. And yeah, like I say, what the true value of art is, just it goes beyond just a simple thing that you can just disconnect and just let it float over you. Things that are actually you're going to take away and go, like you say, watch a film again a few years later, and it feels like a completely different film to you because it's got so much value in it. Well, Leroy, thank you so much, mate. You've shared so much today, and a real great 3 films. And I can say selfishly as well, being able to watch The Family Man for the first time, City of Angels, which I love the soundtrack for, and gave me some nice nostalgic memories of when I saw it the first time. And Aliens, banger. Really, really 3 incredible films. So before I leave you today, is there anywhere where people can follow you? And I'll put it in the show notes, and people can sort of like see this on YouTube and stuff as well.
Yeah, so I'm mainly active on Instagram. I don't really I'm not really super social. I've got to pick it up more. But my Instagram is, I need to do more. Definitely need to do more. My Instagram is just Leroy Kincade. So you can find me there. I'm not super active on YouTube. I am thinking about doing a YouTube channel. I don't know what I talk about, but I'm thinking about doing something there.
I think there's a balance of time. Like if you do so much time on social media, you're actually losing the thing you want to do, which is create. So there's a balance here.
It's like, last night, so I do a lot of work through the night, right? So, my company's called Nocturnal Pictures. So, it's literally Nocturnal Pictures because I do work back to front. So I won't usually go to bed before 5, 6 a.m. in the morning. Wow. So I'll pretty much do my work from like 9 p.m. So I've got a couple of places that are local around here. So I'll go out of the house because otherwise I'm just indoors all the time. So I'll go out and I'll work from like 9 o'clock till like 4, 5 a.m.
Right.
So like I find that creative energy at the night. It's just like, it's the one, man. And I think with the social media side of things, like between going to the gym and between doing all this other stuff, I mean, you can find time to do it, but I find it sort of suffocates my creativity a little bit.
Yeah.
By being so plugged in. Like sometimes I'm like, no, I need to like not be on there today,
Completely understand. But I do appreciate your thoughts that you put up on Instagram now and again, your little stories and stuff like that. I love when you have those. So if anyone does want to go and check out Leroy's Instagram, now and again he whacks up his thoughts of what he's just thinking in the moment. And some of it's actually one of the reasons I wanted to get you on the podcast, because you said a couple of things about very similar to what you've spoken about today, about appreciating the moment and doing the best you can. And I was like, that was a really sort of insightful look into your character. And so made me want to reach out and get in contact. So thanks for that, mate.
Oh, no, and thank you for sharing that. Dude, it's so funny. Like I go to like, let's say I'm out doing some work, right? I get talking to random people. Like I love people. I love engaging with people that I've never met before. Last night there was a guy called Paul or Phil, I can't remember his name, from Germany. He's gone back. He's going back to Denmark today. He's a computer operator, and I sat down talking to him for about half hour, just about like life and stuff like that. And I get nudged so many times, man. Like, people just say, what, you should do a little thing and talk on the gram or talk on YouTube or whatever. And I just end up like, yeah, maybe. And it's funny you said like you appreciate like those thoughts, because I think sometimes the world needs to hear a little bit of positivity or perspective.
Yes,
it's not typical, So it's always nice, when somebody like yourself just gives me that nudge. So thank you for that.
No worries, mate. Well, yeah, listen, I'll put it up on Instagram anyway. I'll put your Instagram handle up and stuff as well. But I will be in contact soon. But I just want to thank you once again for your time. And wish you all the best. And I'll see you soon, mate.
Excellent, brother. Thank you for having me on.
Take care. See you later on. All the best, mate.
See ya.